Let's understand how to run a socket program. So let's first understand what is socket programming, and then we'll see how to run socket program. A socket is a kind of endpoint for an application. So whenever a client and server, that is two nodes in a network, let's call one of them as client and another one as server. If they want to communicate, they need to create sockets. So a client will send the request and server will receive it. Server will process the request, creates the response and sends the response back to the client, and client will process the response. So this is how two processes on the same machine, or it can be on two different machines connected via a network, can communicate. So that's what is a socket. So a socket has a socket address. So every socket has a socket address. How is it framed? If you want to know that, so it contains two parts. One is the IP address, second one is the port number. IP address, we already know IPv4 is of 32 bits size. So every machine which is connected to a network will have a IP address assigned to it. So this is the same IP address, but one single machine can have any number of applications running on it, and many of those applications can create sockets. So in a single machine there can be any number of sockets. Okay, so every socket will have its own identification number called port number, which is of 16 bits. So a socket address is combination of IP address of the machine and port number of that particular application which created the socket. Okay, so now let's try to understand how a communication between server and client happens in case of UDP communication using socket. So first the server will start here. Server starts, it creates a socket. You can see the socket is empty. Then it binds the socket, that is, it binds it to a particular port number. Okay, so it will be bound to a particular uh, port number here, and then it waits for some request from the client. So receive request, so that's where it gets blocked. Blocked means it is waiting for client to send a request. Okay, so now the client starts, it creates a socket, and then it creates a send request and sends it. So this will have the socket address. Socket address will be the server's IP address and this port number to which it is bound. Okay, so this will be sent here, and now when the server receives the request from client, it gets unblocked, it handles the request, generates the response and sends it. Okay, so now once the request is sent, client will be blocked waiting for the response. Once the client receives the response from the server, client will unblock and it continues, it handles the response and it destroys the socket because it doesn't need the socket anymore. So that's how the communication using UDP happens. Okay, so in order to run the program, if not already installed, you need to open Microsoft Store on your Windows machine and search for Ubuntu. Okay, of this particular version. If you prefer to use some other version, that should be absolutely okay. And then search for it in the Microsoft Store and click on install to download and install it. So once it is installed, you can run Ubuntu after the installation. Just go to the start menu, search for Ubuntu, click on it, open it. So this is a Ubuntu terminal on your Windows machine. Okay, so your Windows machine is capable of doing all the Linux things now. So once this is done, you need to run the program. So let's understand how we can run the program. So there will be socket program will contain two parts. One is server side program, another is client side program. So there will be two files, server.c and client.c. You need to write programs for server and client, and you can uh, run these on same machine, or you can also run these on two different machines connected via network. So let's understand how we can run the socket program. So in this Ubuntu machine, let's install GCC, which is the C compiler. You can install it using the command sudo apt get install GCC. Okay, in my machine it's already installed, so it's giving a machine, it's giving a message saying GCC is already in the newest version. But in your system, if it's not installed, it will download it and install it. So after the installation, you need to type your server.c and client.c programs, which I have actually already typed. So if I just do vim server.c, you can see the server program here. And then if I do vim client.c, you can see the client program. Okay, so now you need to compile both the C programs. So the command you guys already know, gcc server.c and -o. I need to put the object file in a file name called server. Similarly, compile client.c in the output name, in the output file name client, client. Okay, so if I do ls minus lt, then if you list the current directory, we have the server and client ready for execution. But now you need to run server in one machine and client in one machine. For now, we will start another Ubuntu terminal. Okay, so I'll place it to the left, and to the right I'll select this. So I have two terminals. So let's use the left one for server, right one for client. So now here in the left one, I'll start the server first. Okay, server started. Now in the right, I'll start the client. Okay, see, as soon as the client started, server displayed, the client is connected. So what is this socket program doing? Client will send a file name as the request, and server will read the contents of the file, and it will send it back to the client, and client will display. So now we know we have created a file called client.c. We just created it. Or if you want, you can create any other text file and you can pass the file name. See here, server ended. So in the client, server has sent the contents of the file and client has displayed it. So that's how the socket program works.